G'day there. Welcome to the Closing Bell. Today I'm going to have a look at a few of the stocks that we reviewed last week in the mining services sector. There's still some good buying going on there. I think there's a bit of an opportunity brewing. But also I've got another stock that came out with a good quarterly and is really looking like it wants to blast off and head to new all-time highs. So I'll give you a look at that in a minute. But first of all, looking at the market, look, it's still stuck in that range. We've had 8 weeks just holding near these all-time highs in our market. I've been fearful of the false break. I think everyone in the market is scratching their head, wondering whether this thing can just carry on with it. But we started the week, pretty weak, looking like the false break possibly was on, and it's turned and rallied pretty hard all week. And US market's pretty strong too. So we are really looking like we want to head higher and that nothing can really stop this thing. So I'll show you those charts, right now. Let's go and check them out. So here we have the ASX 200. Let's have a look at the weekly here, just to give you a sense of what's happening in the short term. I have the 20-week simple moving average, which is my sort of main moving average on the weekly chart, and the 10-week exponential, just to give a sense of that shorter term trend that we've got going on. And you can see since, June last year, this weekly trend has held beautifully, hasn't it? We had a bit of sideways price action before the election, and then that came through and things have blasted off. And we've just had a very steady trend over this past period, even though a lot of the mid-cap, small-cap space has been pretty dodgy. The large cap stuff and the banks and resources has just kept marching higher, hasn't it? And if we look at how it's trading this week, you'll see that we had a low, where prices were breaking down below the low of the range of the last 8 weeks. So it was looking potentially like the selling could come out of the woodwork. But really, prices just retested that 20-week moving average, and the buying pressure is still there. So if we look back over this whole rally, whenever it's got near that 20-week moving average, there's been strong buying. And here it goes again. And we are going to finish the week with prices closing back above that 10-week moving average within this long-term uptrend that's lasted for a year. And right at the all-time highs. I mean, if we get a good night in the US, this is looking like it wants to test the upside for a while. So really, I think, constructive for prices to keep rallying. So if we just review some of those stocks that I was showing you last week, let's have a look at that mining services sector that I was telling you about. The first stock I told you about last week was DDH, a newly listed company that looks after drill rigs. So, as they say, sell the shovels to the gold diggers. That's what the drill people looking after the drill rigs do. They've always got lots of work when markets are booming. And look, on Friday, they've had a massive move, haven't they? I think it was down around, $1.10. When I was discussing them when I was discussing the stock with you last week. And that is a pretty good sign that this uptrend that we can see taking shape here in the short term is definitely intact. And the buying pressure is there. So it's blue sky on DDH from here. Also, a few other stocks that I was mentioning are looking pretty good. McMahon Holdings and other mining services, it's been locked in a sideways distribution for the last couple of years, but the long-term trend is up, as you can see. But we've had, a couple of years of really treading water, and we're just seeing good buying pressure coming out of the buy zone of this whole range. And we're getting a monthly buy pivot probably at the end of this month as well. So I think looking constructive for further upside in Macmahon's. Similar story in those other stocks I mentioned. Some of them have had a pretty good week. Parenti Global, I was showing you as well. They are really bouncing nicely, aren't they? They're up to 92 cents now, closing on their highs for the week. I was showing you last week just how that whole move had evolved, where we're looking at the whole rally over the last few years from 2016 to 2018. We're just sort of working out where those buy and sell zones are of that wave, the point of control of the wave, and just noticing the way prices move into that buy zone, back to the point of control, sell zone, point of control, buy zone, point of control. And here we are again, turning back rapidly to the upside from that buy zone, monthly buy pivot, looking like it wants to head higher. Also, NWH, a similar story. I took you through the technicals on this. I won't spend too much time on these, but just showing you that they are looking pretty strong at the moment. A monthly close above $1.71, and that will create the monthly buy pivot, and just looking like it as well is wanting to head further to the upside. And finally, Macca, closing pretty strong on the week, and rumours of potential takeover target for Macca. So that's probably seen some buying come into the stock late. Again, that one is looking pretty interesting. Still testing near the bottom of all-time lows in the stock. We've had a bit of a spike low at the during the COVID crash last year. It took off to the upside up to around $1.50. And then we've had another wave lower on the back of fears of labour shortages and that sort of thing. But the business itself performing really, really well. So I think looking pretty undervalued, and with the rumours of a takeover coming, I'd say some of the corporates are out there are also thinking this thing's looking a bit undervalued. So I reckon Macca also looking like it wants to take off. So now moving on to the stock that I think is probably about to break out to all-time highs. Who knows, of course, but I'll just show you this chart. I think it's a pretty interesting looking one. This is Wiser. You probably have heard of it if you're around the markets. This one, a bit of a neobank, taking share off the big banks with doing loans. They've got a pretty interesting little app. They've got a really great way of getting their clients in the door. And I think it's pretty impressive the way they do it. And their loan origination book really growing like the clappers, up another 20-30%, I think, in the last quarter, and about 20 quarters of consistent growth. So that thing really starting to get some traction. And if we have a look at the monthly chart here, you'll see, again, my monthly main moving average is that 20-month simple. That's really the line in the sand for me. And, you can get lots of volatility around that, which is why I have the Bollinger Bands going around that 20-month simple, the 1 standard deviation and 2 standard deviation. That's those white lines you can see there. That's pretty much tracking the volatility of the stock as they rally. It's still trending higher regardless of the shakeouts that you see along the way. So it's just a way of visualizing how this stock is moving, and it really is finding good support around that 20-month. You can see again the last shakeout we had in the COVID crash, pulling back to that 20-month moving average, finding strong buying support again. We've got the monthly buy pivot a few months ago, and then another monthly key bar, I call it, once you get a monthly close above the high. And that one retesting the all-time high. And then they've had a capital raise. It's pulled back into buying support. When it's trending strongly, it'll hold that 10-month exponential moving average, finding good buying support there. We've had a good quarterly announcement, and you can see it just closing strong on the week, really getting close to these all-time highs here, and I think ready for blast off. So that one looking like it's ready to really rocket if the overall market does take off to the upside next week. We can't be sure of that, of course. We've got to see what happens in the US tonight. But right at the moment, things are looking pretty good out there in market land, and potentially we'll break out of this 8-week range and see a bit of movement to the upside as more quarterlies come out, showing that companies are bouncing back really well from the COVID crash. Okay, well, that's probably enough for this week. Please make sure you click on the links below the video if you do want to check out my trading services. I run the Australian Small Cap Investigator and Pivot Trader as well, where I teach people really the nuts and bolts of my trading system. So do check that out if you can. Otherwise, I will come back with more next week. Cheers.